in there? We're about ready to begin. I can hear it. I can feel the clock countdown. No blowing up on the platform here. All right, point to me. We're on. Good evening. This is Evergreen Baptist Church, and I'm Pastor Todd. And my computer is not muted. There we go. This is Pastor Todd for our midweek online Bible study, and I'm so glad you decided to join us tonight. We are working off of a brand new mixer system, so it should be working. It's kind of loud in my wife's ears, or that just may be she doesn't like listening to me. Not exactly sure which one that is, but we're so glad. Text us if there's any issues. Hopefully we fixed last week's problem. We have two guests with us, our talking heads and our experts in the fields of rewards. Both have come from a military/homeland security background. So to my right, your left, we have Mr. Matt Torrance, our second best beard in the sanctuary. Have you shaved your beard trimmed it since last Wednesday?
No.
No, okay.
I have not.
And he's also going to be doing Pilates for our characters of I'm sorry, not Pilates. Pilot.
Do we want to encourage people to come?
Yeah, he will not be leading a Pilates class. He is going to be Pilot. So give us really 5 seconds. What would Pilot say to the people watching?
Oh my God! So you made me think about that when you threw
I
that.
didn't give you that
you
question.
did not give me that.
Okay,
I was not prepared. What would
DJ.
Pilot say?
Okay. Oh, I just hit my microphone. Okay. Would you say something like, "Go wash your hands. Keep washing your hands," because we're in COVID? That might be something.
Well, the thought of Pilot teaching Pilates would make a lot of people want to go wash their hands.
Okay, that's good. And Pilate also not only had Jesus crucified, he had the two thieves crucified. So to my left, your right, we have BJ, one of the thieves. Now, BJ, are you going to get saved? Are you going to hold that in suspense and not tell us?
No, I'm probably not going to get saved. Not that day.
Okay.
Because we're going to work on our abs that day.
Oh, he's doing Pilates, and you're going to work on your abs, okay? But only one of you is going to, you or your friend's going to make it to paradise.
That is correct.
We'll have to figure that one out. But we're so glad to have BJ and Matt with us today. Today we're going to be talking about rewards. The rewards, New Testament talks about the believers have a reward. Now, ultimately, our greatest reward is Jesus Christ and the salvation we have. But it's really not a reward, because a reward is kind of like something you earn, something you deserve. And getting Christ is a grace. All of it's grace. So that's not a reward. But there is a point where believers, Paul talks about in Corinth, the judgment seat of Christ, the bema seat of Christ, talks about Christians will be judged, not about their salvation, but about their service. And the New Testament there are about 5 crowns mentioned in the New Testament. Some say 7, and we'll just deal with 5 main ones today. But to open this discussion, I gave my two people a question. What is the greatest or the best or the most unusual reward you ever got in your life? So let's go over to BJ. We'll start with you. So
I have a trophy about this tall.
About 8 inches? Okay.
Yeah, about 8 inches. And it says, best dribbler.
Now, is that from drinking soda fountain?
No, it was from kids basketball. In the basketball, we played juvenile
I don't think
basketball.
I've ever seen you dribble on our basketball court out there.
In West Virginia, over in West Virginia, that's what I did too.
Okay.
Best dribbler.
Best dribbler. Do you still have it?
Yes, I do. Sitting on my showcase.
You're gonna have to show
my
us your
dad
skills.
kept it. That's
We
why.
have to we're going to have to see your skill set one day.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Matt, I know you shared with me yours, and it's a quite interesting reward. So tell us about this. And why did you get the reward first? Let's start
All
with
right.
that.
So back in 1993, I was 17 years old, and I had grown up in the Boy Scouts program, and I had worked all the way up and was getting ready, had finished everything to receive my Eagle Scout award. And part of the process is the Scoutmaster and the committees from the troop would send out notices to presidents, former presidents, and they have this whole program where you can get letters of recognition and congratulatory letters from presidents for achieving the rank of Eagle Scout. So I started receiving all of my certificates, and
We don't have this on camera, so I'm going to try to put this up here and see if I can get it.
so President Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, and everybody.
Who sent you this?
So my actual Eagle badge, but for the year of 1993, July of 93, came from Bill Clinton.
All right, we're going to leave this one here because you got to read it.
So,
Congratulations on receiving the Girl Scout Gold Award.
yes. So I was actually an overachiever back in 1990. Not only did I earn the Eagle Scout Award, but I also earned the Girl Scout Gold Award.
I'm assuming that was a mistake.
Yes, it was, and but I only received the corrected one from Al Gore, who was vice president at the time.
So he did correct it.
He did correct it. I never did receive a corrected one from Bill Clinton. So I'm holding that so that one day if I run into him, I'll just ask him to scratch it out and make it right.
Do you plan on your paths crossing?
No.
Okay, let's just move on. Okay. Okay, maybe you might put in the comments, maybe what is the most unusual reward you've ever received. I promised my son $1 for every chapter of the Bible he would read. He read none of them. Okay, he got no reward that summer. But we're going to be talking about rewards. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the judgment seat of Christ. We know that as believers, there is no condemnation. So this is not about judging for salvation again. It is about judging for service. And from 1 Corinthians, we have the aspect that God will judge believers. It's not the great white throne judgment. It's a separate. There are several different judgments in Scripture, but this is this one for us. And several places throughout Scripture, it talks about crowns. Sunday in our sermon, from the book of James, we talked about the crown of life. And we'll get to that one in just a second. But that's what prompted this whole point of looking at the crowns. So the first one we're going to look at is the crown of victory. This comes from 1 Corinthians Chapter 9, verse 25. So let's go. BJ, back to you. Do you have that verse up where you could read 1 Corinthians 9?
No, not yet.
Okay. You do?
No, I do not.
All right, prepare for the 1 Thessalonians one, and I'll go over here. Matt, get me 1 Corinthians 9, 25.
Just verse 25?
25 through 27.
Okay. 1 Corinthians 9, verses 25 through 27. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like a man running aimlessly. I do not fight like a man beating the air. No, I beat my body and make it my slave so that I have preached to others. I myself will not be disqualified for the prize.
Powerful. So it's not really called crown of victory in many places. Here it says we're going to receive an incorruptible or an imperishable crown. The word crown itself comes from the word Stephanos, where we get the name Stephen. The name Steve comes from crown. Now, when I say crown, most people think of royalty, kind of, King Arthur or whatever, over in Great Britain, and the crown, the gold, and all that. But this is that badge of royalty, a symbol of honor, but it is a prize given to an athlete. That's why in the Corinthians passage, it deals so much with this aspect. Now, also, Paul has been dealing with this whole aspect that in our world, everything decays. Peter mentions that as well, that in our world, everything, the moth will eat it, it'll all go away. And so even the athletes' crowns, the gold medals you get at Olympics, all these different things, maybe not the little trophy of world's best dribbler, okay, such as that, but that eventually one day will also, be in a pile of junk and decay. But Paul is pushing, this is imperishable, it is incorruptible. And he really says all the crowns are like this. Mm-hmm. That's why some scholars have come around and said we need to differentiate this one in Corinthians, so they call it the victory crown, because it's dealing with the running. Now, there's a little problem with that concept of victory. Does that mean that those that run the race that maybe stumble and don't make it, do they not receive a crown? If this is for believers, what is it about this crown do you see? And don't get me wrong, all believers will get into heaven, but not all believers will get every crown. All right? But what is it about this crown that we would get it? How would we deserve it? How would it be a reward for what? What it would be a reward for is the question. Y'all have kind of an answer to that?
Well, it's kind of like those that I was thinking is that it's when we participate and we don't quit, we endure.
Oh, great word.
Endure. So we have to participate, and we have to endure those things. So when we stop because it's too hard, we're not going to get no crown. You got to finish.
Now, did you get to become best dribbler by just one day walking onto the court, dribbling one time, and getting the reward? Or did
No,
you
I got to
actually-
be best dribbler because I dribbled on a gravel
But
driveway.
Did you
and
practice?
all the time?
All the time. One of the things about this crown of victory is the athlete doesn't just show up to the meet.
Mm-hmm.
He disciplines himself. He sacrifices for the event itself. You don't go into the Army and say, I'm just going to put on the uniform and go fight. And you spend, how many weeks is basic now?
Basic is 9.5 weeks.
9.5 weeks, And I mentioned Sunday about the crown of life. God gives that, and he's going to keep giving you the test till you pass.
Right.
And so the crown of victory is for those believers that they're going through the Christian walk, but they're staying dedicated, they're staying disciplined, they're training themselves. And the point is, you may train but never get a chance to compete.
That's I really like in the lesson that you would send us to prepare for and for this tonight. The last sentence talks about thinking about how you spend your time, your money, and your talents. And the question is asked, do your habits reflect service to God, or do they indicate other priorities?
Oh, I like the word habits there. So
Right.
It's not just, it's an everyday event.
Right, and when you think of running a race, or being the best dribbler in the
We're
neighborhood.
not going to let that one go.
Yeah, I'm going to carry this one. You hit it. You practice. You train, as he said. He beat his body. You break it down and you build it back up. The same thing we do in basic training. They come in, you break them down, you build them back up. But at the end, when it's all done, is that whole piece is how does it reflect the service to God?
Now, as in the military or the Coast Guard, if you passed your physical at basic, was that it? Did you ever have to take the physical again? I mean, for how many?
Yes, quite often you have to do that.
Every year.
Every year. So, fortunately for preachers, they don't make us go back and renew our ordination. But we'll move on to that. That's the fifth. We'll get to that in another crown in a second. So the crown of victory, and I want to also Elmer Towns, one of our local boys. Elmer Towns brings out all of these 5 crowns have the aspect of faithfulness. Okay, and it is a crown for being faithful. So I want to give you each one, and as we go along, this one is the faithfulness of self-control.
Wow.
Okay? You practice, you sacrifice, you discipline. It is self-control. So when you get to heaven, Elmer Towns kind of looks at it, this is the crown of reward for the faithfulness of self-control. They're all about faithfulness, but this one is self-control. Let's move on to the crown of rejoicing. Do you have the 1 Thessalonians Chapter 2?
It says, "For what is our hope or joy or crown of rejoicing? Is it not even you in the presence of the Lord Jesus Christ at his coming?"
This one's actually it's a basic. You're just rejoicing, but what are you rejoicing with? I mean, it's a crown of rejoicing, but what do you get? How do you get this reward?
You're rejoicing at Christ coming.
And the whole concept is you keep looking for the coming. You stay aware. Do you remember the parable in the Gospels about the 10 virgins, the 10 maidens?
Mm-hmm. Right.
There were 5, and there were 5. What was the difference between the 2 groups of 5?
5 let their candles burn out.
Yeah, they didn't get the oil, they didn't trim their wicks, they didn't have their candles burn out, and the other 5 what?
Prepared and had
Prepared
enough.
for the bridegroom
That's right.
to come. And if you understand the Jewish concept of the wedding, that could be, once he was ready, he just showed up and then the parade started. And I see that kind of crown of rejoicing. You stay steadfast to the very end. Now, the end may be the second coming, or the end maybe he calls you home. But again, it kind of goes back to the similar. It's not that you just prepare, but you're alert to the whole purpose of it's about him and him coming. And I also get the concept of rejoicing because in heaven, what does it say? No more sorrow, no more mourning, no more tears. And I get it. All of us are going to be rejoicing in heaven. But there is a crown of rejoicing that I remain faithful and my God acknowledged that. What did he tell Stephen when he was being stoned? Well done.
My faithful
good and faithful servant. And it's that concept. We all want that. Elmer Town said, this is the faithfulness in service. The first one's in self-control. You control yourself. The second one is you continue serving, like the 5 maidens. You stay prepared and you're ready. The third crown is the crown of righteousness. And this also comes from the pastoral epistles of 2 Timothy, and it reads, finally, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day, and not to me only, but to all who have loved his appearing. And again, this is that aspect of, I totally missed crown of rejoicing, didn't I? I got these two backwards. I'll go back to that one in a second. But this is the one where they're looking for God, and they're continuously aspect of, I look toward Christ coming and toward his appearance. And they're both in these Pauline's epistles, and I got it. So, in this point, those that await his coming. So what does this mean today? And I apologize for my confusion on that one.
I think you were right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what does this mean today in the crown of righteousness?
It's that we do what is right in God's sight, but we have to be doing things like missions. We have to be doing things that are right for God.
Yeah.
To me, it is that thing that I have to be active in doing things for righteousness.
What I
I
meant
can't
that I
just
got
sit at a house and be.
Yeah. What I meant that I got it wrong was the parable of the maidens.
Got you.
This one goes better with the parable of the
Right.
maidens. You stayed faithful and you were ready and you were looking, and so you remain righteous and conscious. The first one, the crown of rejoicing, the whole chapter is really dealing with the aspect of soul winning.
Right.
I'm serving God, I'm proclaiming my faithfulness and service, and it is this aspect of it is, many actually call it the soul winner's crown, okay? And the crown of righteousness, I wrote maidens down on the wrong page there. And the crown of righteousness is this aspect, I'm ready, I'm prepared, but it's not just that, I'm also telling people.
Right.
I'm proclaiming this. So Elmer Towns actually calls it, this one, the faithfulness and testimony.
And the big piece that I picked up reading was on the crown of righteousness is the longing for heaven
Yeah.
and not being caught up in worldly things.
Oh, that's powerful.
If you're going to long for heaven, then what's going on around you right here, right now on earth really is minuscule compared to what you have prepared and waiting for you.
Yeah. So the crown of righteousness, which is in 2 Timothy 4:8, the board on the computer says just says Timothy, but it's 2 Timothy. Y'all don't see that, but online. So the crown of victory is that I steadfast, I remain self-controlled. The crown of rejoicing is I look for God's coming, and Paul says, you are my joy. I look to the people there in Thessalonica, and you are my joy, and there is that joy of a soul winner. And the crown of righteousness is that steadfastness and that testimony and that preparedness. Then we get to the crown of life. And this is mentioned in James 1:12, which I preached a little bit on Sunday, but it's also mentioned in Revelation 2:10. And BJ, you got the James passage in front of you?
I do. It said, blessed is the man that endures temptation, for when he is tried at the judgment seat of Christ, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him.
And the Revelation passage says this, do not fear what you're about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested. And for 10 days you will have tribulation. So be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. So the concept here is that under persecution, under trials, you remain steadfast. You could be a athlete and have no real struggle. Okay, I know that the practice and rehearsal and the pushing and the weights, but I'm talking about it might come easy, but it also you may not have any outside troubles. You could have the crown of rejoicing, the people that you're sharing the gospel with, or the crown of righteousness of awaiting, and still no major conflict, no persecution. But the crown of life is that those that are going through persecution, those that are being beat down and ridiculed, or even physically, and they will receive the crown of life. Sunday I mentioned this might be the crown which is life, but it's not that, because that's more about salvation. Again, this crown is about service. So Elmer Towns actually calls this faithfulness in temptation, faithfulness in trials. And in this aspect, that is the crown of life. All right?
So let me pose a question to you.
Okay.
As I was reading, this kind of came up, and thinking about it, and the crown of life, and when you're talking about, have you suffered for the sake of the gospel? It kept coming up, and maybe it's not necessarily a question; it's more of a statement. But how would you, I guess, respond to it? And that is that God allows humans to make decisions. He gave us brain to make decisions. He's given us that freedom to make our decisions. Our choices is part of the cause for our suffering.
Often, yes. Yes. James there's two things. There's suffering because of trials and circumstances. And those may be outside of your control. You may have no input into that. Job,
Right.
his choices had no, he chose how to respond. But there are oftentimes the choices we make. We choose to go to a certain country for mission work, and we know that's going to be a trial.
Right.
But then after this passage in James 1:12, he deals with temptation, which is specifically wrong choices.
Right. And that goes back to the victor's crown.
Yes.
It's almost like these two kind of come together because of the decisions that you make, and you're suffering. If you're making the right decisions and you're training yourself and you're preparing yourself, then the second half, and getting into the crown of life, it all kind of fits together.
Yeah, and I also love the aspect of James 1:13 through 18 mentions death. That if you make the wrong decisions in temptation and sin,
Ultimately, it leads to
death. Now, it's obviously not physical death, otherwise we'd all be corpses.
Right.
But it is the death of our fruitfulness, the death of our witness, the death of our, to a degree, even our fellowship with God. But fortunately, the beauty of all this, as long as we're still living, there is reconciliation, there is restoration, and we have that in part of the crown of life. But the crown of life is you stuck through it. You stood strong under persecution. In the military, I know, and you're wearing the Marines and the SEALs, the old bell, I'm belling out. I'm not going to do this. I just stop. Do they do that in the Army anymore? Can you just drop out of
In special
basic?
forces, they do. Not, you can. It's a process. But more of your special forces, they do that. Yes.
Yeah, and I know there's a very strict, and you push yourself, and you kind of go, I don't want to go through that struggle. And to some degree, there are many Christians that do that same type of point. We push ourselves, and all of a sudden when life gets hard, it's like, whoa.
We tap out.
We tap out. I mean, the whole concept of Judas is he walked with Jesus, he did all this, and yet he tapped out, literally. All right, the last crown is the crown of glory, and this is in 1 Peter chapter 5. And I'll read this one because it deals more with me, but it does deal with y'all too as well. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that does not fade away. And this is a crown given to shepherds or elders. And I love the concept of the way this translation says the chief shepherd. So we're basically under shepherds. This is shepherds, it's elders, it's the leaders in the church, but it's not just ordained. It could be, y'all are shepherds. You have, you teach a Sunday school class. Both of you work with our children's EBC Square, our boys' missions group. So y'all have a responsibility. To a degree, you're a shepherd as a parent.
I was going to say, when somebody goes up and dedicates a child, and we, the church, accept shepherding this child, we will shepherd this child.
One, I think it was Elmer Townsend said it. This is the crown that goes to the feeders of the flock. And to be degree, there are a lot of individual feeders in certain areas, so I love that aspect.
So you don't think it's just primary pastors?
No, I don't. I think there is, there is a place in there. As a pastor, I don't work for that, but there is. I do believe there is a place that there is if there's heavier responsibility, there's also heavier rewards in that aspect. So I may not get an 8-inch best dribbler.
Yeah, you might get.
I get the 24-inch one.
Yeah, you might get the great big one.
And I'm not going to be the Girl Scout of the Year award like you got from that aspect. But it
One in a
is.
million.
So Now, I get the point of crowns, I get the point of rewards, but the bottom line is, what difference does this make to the way I live? Now, the one study I gave, so there are 4 applications, and I want to kind of challenge you with this, and then we're going to get into what you said. But number one, and I said it from the very beginning, we reject that you're saved by works. You do not get a reward of salvation. Salvation is by grace through faith, nothing else. You're not saved by works, but you are saved for works. Number 2, our greatest reward is Jesus Christ, and we should never, ever look past that. He is our reward. He is what we strive for. I also want to give you the third one. Resist doing work for the reward. Okay? The point of this is we don't do this for the crown.
That's right.
We do this to glorify God. If we're doing it for the crown, we're doing it for ourselves. There are a lot of people that, like in the NFL, the aspect of they want to be the star. They want to be, the whatever, that type of aspect. But, they used to say there's no I in team. There's no I in team. But we work and we win and we go as a team. So we resist doing it for the reward. There's nothing wrong with the reward. But the point is we do it for the glory of God. And fourthly, we ultimately should reflect upon the ultimate God of the rewards. Remember who's actually rewarding you. And that just brings back to the fact that he allows us to serve him. The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the God of all universe. So, if we go back to the concept of this crown is an athletic award trophy, what does that tell us the way we should be living? And this goes into the way, the application that y'all kind of had on your handout that I gave y'all.
Like it goes back to the simple fact of training. As an athlete, obviously you're training to be the best, and it's not just once in a blue moon that you're doing this. The same thing. You are preparing on a daily basis, to receive these crowns, and you have to work at it.
Yeah.
And every single day you have to be working on it. If
Well,
not,
I wasn't laughing at you.
no, I know.
She did something up there. And
Something
your camera
happened in
just
the
went totally
background. I
wrong.
heard it too, and I'm trying to keep my focus. How'd I do?
You'll get a reward. Y'all, our 2 ladies will get a reward for persevering through our mess.
Yes.
They are enduring.
They're enduring. Okay, BJ, what does it tell us about the way we should be living?
I think almost every one of these things that I read through, they wanted to make sure that we talked about our salvation. We're not going to lose our salvation because I don't get a crown.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not going to lose my salvation because I'm just not going to get a crown. But as Matt says, I can't, unless I'm studying, reading my Bible, unless I'm doing these things that says that this is what I should be doing, I'm not really living for Christ. And I need to want to know what's in the Word so that I can live for Christ.
Yeah.
So for me,
So the steadfastness, the discipline.
So that's it. We have to be able to do it in our life. And I've spoke to to the young kids this week and said, hey, you need to be reading Proverbs. You want wisdom? Read Proverbs.
Yeah.
Read them all. One of the boys come back and he's reading it.
Right.
He's reading it and he's saying, I read it. And there's some pretty neat stuff in there.
Yep.
Now, you're a parent with 2 teenagers. You're a parent, and your kids you're now raising a second generation of grandkids.
second
What are they?
generation.
4 and
One is 5. One is 4 and 6. 4 and 6.
4 and 6. So, what would you tell? Let's start with the 4 and 6-year-old. What would you tell your 4 and 6-year-old about this is the way we should be living for Jesus?
Trying to be a good boy and not fight. Don't fight. Don't fight.
And what if they mess up?
Or if they mess up, you're going to get punished. We're going to get punished. I think we make bad choices. We have to endure.
Okay. So there's that concept of staying faithful. And you've got 2 teenagers. One has actually started her first behind the wheels. You're a brave old boy. So what do you tell them about how they should live for God? Give me 1 or 2 pieces of snippet advice.
And I have a 17-year-old or 16-year-old boy, soon to be 17, and my daughter is 13, soon to be 14. So I have.
We teach them to drive young here.
Yes, we do. I prepare them early, and but that goes to this. is you're never too young to start preparing.
Yes.
And you prepare because for her, using her as an example, she's going to have to take her driver's test. She has to prepare for this. So the same thing for us, for Beverly and I, is we are preparing them every single day to ultimately, when their time comes, to receive their crowns and to be with Christ. And they have already accepted that, and they know where they're going to be. But it's a daily struggle for them. So constantly reminding them, just like you said in reading Proverbs, staying in the Word and looking to Him for guidance, for guidance when they have those questions. Because they're at an age, BJ, your grandkids are with you 24/7. So you're able to really kind of steer them. Mine are now starting to go off on their own.
That's right.
Trey's driving and he leaves. So making sure that he knows, because we can't be there all the time anymore. So now it's that next stage, in preparing. And God has done the same thing with us. We're His children. Where He's raising us up and giving us the freedoms but He's provided everything we need to prepare.
I love the aspect of also preparing whomever you're mentoring, whomever you're raising up, kids, or even mine, he's at 30 now, that you keep the mindfulness in front of them. It's harder for yours, but you keep the mindfulness in front of them that there is a greater and a next. This is only the step.
Right.
And this is, I hate to quote that great theologian, the Gladiator, how we live in this life prepares us for the next. And there is the concept that the way we live now does impact eternity.
Well, I think your example you use Sunday, with regards to, and I wish I brought my notes with me, how you live your life today, how will others see it in the rearview mirror? How
the
will
choices
you see
you
it,
make
the
today
choices you make today
will be what you see in the rearview mirror down
right.
the road.
And I think it's a great example because, and it's not just what I see in the rearview mirror, it's what other folks are going to see as well. So you have to really be thinking about what you decide to do.
Yeah. So I hope we didn't confuse you too much on the crowns and there, and I hope you enjoyed our camera back and forth. That was really fun to watch from here. I don't know how you actually switch from front to rear camera, but we're learning. We don't know. Maybe somebody hacked our phones and did it, and it's not Karen's fault, okay? But from that aspect. But we're glad you joined us. The point of all this is there will come a day if you are a child of God, your salvation is secure. But there will come a day you will stand before the judgment seat of Christ. You will be judged according to what God has given you and how you dealt with it. And there will be rewards from, your judgments will go from gold all the way down to straw. And what lasts will be the basis of your rewards. And the concept here is we see what He desires out of us. He desires steadfastness. He desires soul winning and rejoicing from sharing the gospel. He desires a preparedness and a discipline. And He desires for those that are going to be feeding the flock that they remain faithful. And what's sad I'm learning today is so many millennials and Zoomers that are getting to the ministry early are dropping out within 5 years. And I understand right now, with COVID, it is not easy to be a minister in a church. And in our culture, it is not easy to be a minister. But God will reward. He notices when you remain steadfast. And we don't do it for the rewards. We do it to give Him glory. And that's really the best reward I ever want to get from Him, is that one day He says, well done, good and faithful servant. Because in the end, what do we do with the crowns? Just going to throw this at the very end.
That's right.
What do we do with the crowns that
Throw
we
them
get?
at Jesus' feet.
All our crowns will be thrown at the feet of Jesus. So the point is, the more rewards we get, the more we can throw back at Him. That doesn't sound really politically correct, but you kind of know where I'm going. Thank you for joining us. I'm so glad that we had you online. We will have at least one more week. Not sure what will happen during the week of Passion, the week between Palm Sunday and Easter, but one more week with this. And next week will be a little bit more specific about temptation, because that's our sermon Sunday. So I'll be bleeding off that.
Golden Circle, Thursday.
Right. Any last words?
Golden Circle,
Golden
Thursday.
Circles, Thursday night.
Golden Circle.
Thursday night.
These shirts are on sale.
Right.
Go online.
Kelly Elder.
Kelly Elder, or call the church office. You got another week to get the deadline in. This week. It's got to be in this week. May God bless you, and so long.